Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Tuesday, July 28th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and we begin tonight with answers many San Diegans have been waiting for. Were there toxic chemicals spewing from the fire on board the USS Bonhomme Richard? The test results are out, and officials are clearing the air over what was found blowing across nearby neighborhoods. Here's KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson.
The fire burned for 5 days before Navy officials put out the flames, and that meant 5 days of thick, acrid smoke blanketing San Diego neighborhoods. The complaints came immediately.
We can smell something, what is it? Of course, the portside communities, Barrio Logan and National City, we started to get complaints of people getting headaches and feeling nauseous.
The Environmental Health Coalition's David Flores says he wasn't surprised to learn the smoke contained toxic chemicals, and he is not convinced the threat is over because the fire is out.
We believe that there is still smoke residue in adjacent communities, much like after a large wildfire.
Flores is working with residents to collect samples of the residue. Meanwhile, the San Diego Air Pollution Control District concedes that there were toxic chemicals in the smoke coming off the ship. Things like benzene that may have come from burning fuel or plastics.
They weren't at super high levels, but they were, numbers that were higher than normal.
Bill Brick is the district's chief of monitoring. He says a lot of the smoke traveled up instead of just washing over the port neighborhoods. He says the concentrations of chemicals they did find were within state safety limits.
I can't say it was healthy to breathe, but we did not measure anything that exceeded those numbers put out by the state.
Navy officials say they plan to continue to work with the Air Pollution Control District and their community partners. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
And now for the latest on the coronavirus in our county. Moments ago, health officials announced 14 more people have died from the virus. The 6 women and 8 men ranged in age from early 60s to late 90s. 498 new cases were confirmed, pushing the total now past 28,000. 8 new outbreaks were also identified, including 5 in restaurants, 1 in a gym, 1 in a nail salon, and 1 in a home. San Diegans who have fallen behind on rent because of the pandemic just got a little extra time to repay it. Here's KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen.
San Diego has had a moratorium on evictions of residential and commercial tenants since March. The freeze is set to expire at the end of September, but tenants will have until December 30th to repay what they owe. Council President Georgette Gomez says local unemployment is still in the double digits. COVID-19 infections are rising, and many are on the edge of homelessness.
We have not resolved the pandemic. Our economic crisis has not been resolved, and we still need more time. Businesses and residents are not making rent, and we need to ensure we are taking care of them.
The council passed the extension on a 5-4 vote Tuesday, which means it could be vetoed by the mayor. Opponents say the measure will only hurt small-scale landlords' ability to pay their mortgages. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Congress has 4 days to make a deal before federal unemployment benefits expire for millions of Americans. Whitney Wild breaks down the debate over the next round of coronavirus relief.
Bickering on the Senate floor.
Shame
on our Republican friends.
Republicans are ready to govern.
As lawmakers debate the next round of legislative relief,
We Democrats want a real bill that answers people's needs.
for businesses and families struggling amid the coronavirus pandemic.
Let's get past this partisan cheap shots and have an adult conversation.
The Senate Republican proposal includes incentives for schools to reopen, tax cuts and liability protections for businesses, hospitals, and schools from lawsuits related to the pandemic.
Republicans put forward a $1 trillion proposal for kids, jobs, and health care, including direct cash to households and even more cash to unemployment people.
The Republican plan slashes federal unemployment payments from $600 per week to $200 per week before being replaced by a federal and state unemployment hybrid.
Taxpayers should not pay people more not to work than people who do go back to work.
Democrats also want a direct stimulus payment, but their $3 trillion plan keeps unemployment benefits as is, while including housing relief and food assistance.
If you can barely afford the rent, can't find work, can't feed your kids, or are fighting your family's future, the Republican plan leaves you out in the cold.
A final deal between Republicans and Democrats also must get the green light from President Trump. And while the road to compromise will be long and rocky, everyone agrees the nation needs relief.
Let us come together and get something done. America desperately needs our help.
At the White House, I'm Whitney Wild.
The Trump administration says dreamers can renew their permits to stay and work in the U.S. for a year while it reviews the legality of DACA. The Obama-era program covers hundreds of thousands of immigrants brought to the U.S. illegally as children. The Supreme Court ruled that President Trump didn't follow the correct procedure when he tried to end DACA, but affirmed his ability to do so. The Trump administration says it will not accept new applications for the program. Customs and Border Protection's aggressive response to ongoing protests across the country has come under intense scrutiny from some state lawmakers. Now, KPBS reporter Max Nadler tells us that in June, CBP supplied munitions that San Diego law enforcement fired on protesters.
Look at him! Look up top shooting!
The San Diego County Sheriff's Department requested assistance from CBP on 5 separate occasions during protests between May 31st and June 11th. That's according to a letter prepared by CBP, responding to questions from California Senator Kamala Harris. The letter was obtained by The Nation magazine. The requests, which were among the most made by any law enforcement agency in the country during this time period, included assistance regarding less lethal munitions, crowd control, and airborne support. The San Diego County Sheriff's Department told KPBS that in response to the requests, CBP delivered pepper balls and chemical agents, also known as tear gas, after the sheriff had depleted their supply of both. The department said the tear gas did not meet its criteria, so they were not used. Disputing the CBP document, the Sheriff's Department says CBP agents were not used for crowd control, and that CBP agents did not make any arrests connected to the protests. CBP agents were present at the protests, however. The Sheriff's Department said that CBP agents at the protests reported directly to the sheriff. CBP's letter says the San Diego Police Department also requested aid. SDPD told KPBS that it made no such request. The Sheriff's Department says that all aspects of California's SB 54, which limits cooperation between local law enforcement and federal immigration enforcement, were followed during the protests. Tom Wong has studied interactions between local law enforcement and the Department of Homeland Security in San Diego.
I think this is gray area for what local law enforcement officials here in San Diego and elsewhere in California may or may not be able to do when it comes to reaching out to Customs and Border Protection. For example, when there's a protest.
He says it's very possible that California's lawmakers could revisit laws governing interactions between the two agencies. Max Nadler, KPBS News.
2 local universities are denouncing posts made on social media. UC San Diego says an account claiming to be affiliated with the school posted racist and hateful content, including white supremacist propaganda. The posts were made Sunday night. The University of San Diego says similar posts were made from an account claiming ties to the university. Twitter Twitter has disabled the account of Donald Trump Jr. The president's son posted misinformation on COVID-19, which is a violation of the platform's rules. And as a result, he will not be allowed to tweet or use other features for a 12-hour period. The video shared by Trump Jr. featured pro-Trump doctors who contradicted the president's own medical advisors on the pandemic. U.S. Attorney General William Barr testified before the House Judiciary Committee today. As Daryl Forges reports, Barr faced questions about controversial decisions made by the Justice Department.
Your tenure has been marked by a persistent war against the department's professional corps in an apparent attempt to secure favors for the president.
Attorney General William Barr in a long-awaited showdown with the House Judiciary Committee.
I want to thank you for defending law enforcement, for pointing out what a crazy idea this defund the police policy, whatever you want to call it, is, and standing up for the rule of law.
This is the AG's first hearing before the committee, where he came under fire for the handling of several issues, including his involvement in the prosecutions of 2 allies of President Donald Trump and his move last month to oust U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman.
The president has not attempted to interfere in these decisions. On the contrary, he has told me from the start that he expects me to exercise my independent judgment.
Barr also facing a barrage of questions from Democrats on his handling of the use of force against protesters in Lafayette Square, protests in Portland, and the issue of police brutality.
You seem to have a difficult time understanding systemic racism and institutional racism that has plagued so many.
The Attorney General pushing back, saying monuments need to be protected, the need for law and order, and police should not be demonized.
The demonization of the police is not only unfair and inconsistent with principles of all people should be treated as individuals, but gravely injurious to the inner city communities.
Daryl Forges, KPBS News.
More COVID trouble for Major League Baseball and the one team dealing with an outbreak of cases. Today, the league announced the Miami Marlins will not play for the rest of the week. They were scheduled to be back in Miami after a trip to Philadelphia, where more than a dozen players and staff tested positive. Major League Baseball says the cases are isolated to the Marlins and that no cases were detected among the other 29 teams. Child care centers across the state are struggling financially in the COVID era, even those that have stayed open. KPBS reporter Claire Trageser looks at what this means for the wider economy.
It's been a busy few months for Rebecca Fielding Miller. As an epidemiologist and assistant professor at UC San Diego, she's been helping in the fight against the coronavirus. As the mother of an almost 3-year-old, she's been trying to get work done with a toddler at home. Her daughter's child care center closed in March, but they were hoping she could go back soon.
Finally, we got word that our daycare would be opening again, but not, I think not until the end of August.
Fielding Miller's situation is becoming more common for parents in San Diego County and across the state as child care centers struggle to stay in business. Experts say the closures signaled the start of a child care crisis that will have ripples across the economy. A study from UC Berkeley found that in Southern California, almost 2/3 of child care programs experienced loss of income due to low attendance or families not paying, and more than 4 in 5 made staffing changes, including laying off staff or cutting benefits.
There's this real tension between choosing between their physical health and their financial health and well-being.
Leah Austin is the co-author of the study.
Providers who are working and operating programs are really worried about their own health risks and that they're taking risks with their health, even though that makes them worried and uncomfortable to do so in order to avoid financial collapse.
Child care centers in California need grants from the government to stay afloat, Austin says.
We want the economy in California to rebound and be able to be robust going forward. Childcare is so essential and critical to that.
San Diego County supervisors will vote on a grant program next week. Claire Trageser, KPBS News.
The Portside Pier is now open, bringing with it hundreds of new jobs and hopefully a financial boost during the pandemic. The new 2-level multi-restaurant waterfront venue is celebrating its grand opening today along the North Embarcadero. The 42,000 square foot development is part of the San Diego waterfront redevelopment.
And as you know, indoor dining is not allowed right now. We're very fortunate to have over half of our space at this complex outdoors and being able to distance. So when we're full power, we've got about 1,000 seats. Right now, in the current circumstance, we have about 500 of those available. So we're very fortunate in that regard.
The Brigantine Restaurant Group built the project to replace Anthony's Fish Grotto, whose 52-year lease expired in 2016.
Temperatures on the rise here across the San Diego area over the next couple of days. For the next few mornings, we'll continue with the morning low clouds, giving way to some sunshine, but it does look like that marine layer is going to get shallower and shallower as high pressure builds, so we'll see less in the way of these morning clouds. And our temperatures will continue to gradually rise, and in the deserts, it's getting really hot, dangerously hot conditions are expected. We continue with our excessive heat watches, and now we have some excessive heat warnings here, as these temperatures will be well into the triple digits. So it's going to get really hot in the desert regions. Temperatures for tonight, low 60s in Oceanside, San Diego 65, Escondido 58, El Cajon at 63, Mount Laguna at 59. As we take a look at the Wednesday weather, well, the heat continues to build here out across the deserts. Some morning clouds will give way to our sunshine, and it'll still be rather comfortable. Temperatures up to 79 in Oceanside, San Diego 77, getting up to 89 in Escondido, but 96 Ramona, El Cajon 94, Borrego Springs 113, and Campo is up to 100. So temperatures are rising. And there we go. That high pressure continues to strengthen. So temperatures will be rising here. We'll see some light winds. No storms are expected as monsoonal moisture is not with us. Our low clouds will start to thin out more and more each day. Temperatures rising. End of the week, we'll warm to low 80s. Inland areas, it'll be hot. Temperatures mid to upper 90s. And as we take you to the mountains, it's warm here too. Temperatures rising into the mid and upper 80s. And as we take you out to the deserts, it's going to be very hot. You see our temperatures between 115 and 120 over the weekend. And for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
Supply shortages nearly forced the county to cancel appointments at its COVID-19 testing sites until a local company stepped in. KPBS health reporter Taryn Mento toured the facilities at Helix to learn how they're navigating around scarce resources.
This is Boots. He's an automated liquid handling platform at Helix Laboratory in La Jolla. He gets his name from a star constellation and shouts it out loud anytime he needs attention from lab staff like Jason Nguyen.
Booties, booties, bo.
Well, he has trouble with the double O, so it's Booties.
So it's Boots, but we can't get a robot to say that.
In a room full of similar devices, Boots' calls alert Nguyen that his machine needs help.
To get attention there, it calls out its name, and then you can just go directly there. So each one of these we've personified.
Boots is the first in a series of automated machines running COVID tests from county sites, and they demand consistency. But today, Boots can't find the barcode on one of the dozens of test tubes he's about to handle.
Booties, booties.
Nguyen thinks frequent use of hand sanitizer may have rubbed a bit of it off.
Yeah, we have some with the known issue with the alcohol.
The minor hiccup requires Nguyen to enter the ID manually and another person to verify. Machines like Boots and his roommate, Cassiopeia, depend on uniformity to process thousands of tests in a day. But their services and the daily supplies needed to keep them running are in high demand across the country.
We're doing something like 600,000 tests a day in the U.S. 3 months ago, 6 months ago, we didn't do any of those.
Mark Laurent is vice president of operations at Helix, the lab where Boots resides. The startup focuses on the human genome, but jumped into COVID testing as the need grew.
Every single one of that tests requires a tube. That's every day. So these are millions of tubes a week that essentially were not planned for.
Helix needs at least 2,000 tubes a day for its testing agreement with the county. But Vice President of Quality and Research and Development, David Becker, says it's not easy to use just any tube.
You don't get a tube that is
half an inch in diameter one day and 3/4 of an inch in diameter the next day, that your robotic systems and your processes don't handle those very well.
It can take time and human effort to reprogram with every fluctuation. Helix operations head Laurent says they work directly with producers to better handle any upcoming challenges.
We've been working directly with the manufacturer to understand what option they had at time for a given week. To understand, okay, so the normal supply is constrained. Do you have another tube that's close enough that we could adjust to and work with?
There are even greater constraints on the chemicals that help detect coronavirus and plastic tips that pour them, called pipettes. Machines are proprietary, and these components aren't always interchangeable. Plus, about a dozen pipettes are required for every specimen, and they're each tossed in the trash after use. This can mean limited options when a supplier runs out. County health officials dealt with a similar dilemma earlier this month. A supplier said it had to temporarily cut the county's weekly shipments of collection materials, also known as testing kits.
We were facing a real tough situation of needing to close down some of our county testing sites.
County Health Agency Director Nick Mascione says Helix provided a last-minute reprieve.
Our ability to test will stabilize because of this new partnership. But we're always looking to bolster our resources. In fact, that's how we found Helix.
CEO Mark Stapley said Helix made some decisions to help reduce restrictions on its testing kits. They selected a type of swab that's more abundant, at least for now, and a transport media that can stay at room temperature instead of chilled.
You need the refrigeration either in the packaging or the transportation itself in order to keep everything at a stable temperature. And so we've obviated that issue with the supply chain by picking the transport media we did.
Still, the company will have to further navigate the challenges as it plans to significantly expand its testing capacity to 10,000 by the fall and possibly even grow to 25,000. That'll use other machines known as sequencers that Helix staff nicknamed Vesuvius and Fuji. But the first stop in the process will still be boots.
Bo-O-Ts.
Sorry, Bo-O-Ts. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
A lost decade for San Diego's housing goals. That's the finding of a new report detailing San Diego's shortage. The city's annual housing inventory report shows San Diego built just 48% of the needed housing units from 2010 through 2019. But the report also states that recent incentives for builders could spur new construction. Just last month, the city updated its general housing plan, calling for 100,000 new units to be built by 2029. And the median asking price for a single-family home in San Diego is now $650,000, making home ownership out of reach for many. But as KPBS reporter John Carroll shows us, a new project in National City will change that for some families.
This dirt lot at the corner of Harding and 18th Streets in National City is in the process of transformation. Habitat for Humanity is partnering with the San Diego Community Land Trust to build 6 townhomes on this site. This morning, the ceremonial groundbreaking. National City Mayor Alejandra Sotelo Solis threw the first shovel of dirt. Because of physical distancing, several others followed her one by one.
This for us is a first, but it's also, too, not the last.
6 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath townhomes between 1,100 and 1,300 square feet will be built. The mayor says this project is a great step toward returning the neighborhood to primarily residential.
Hey, this is what we want, a walkable, breathable neighborhood that is for us, is for not only this generation, but generations to come.
As is the case with every Habitat project, the families that are selected to purchase these townhomes will also help build them. Mortgages won't be any higher than 30% of a family's household income. The head of San Diego Habitat for Humanity says having a home is about so much more than just a place to stay.
That's when their health improves. It's when their children do better in school. They have a place to study. A home is such a foundational need for families to be able to thrive.
The start of construction was delayed a few months because of COVID-19, but now everything is underway. If all goes well, the 6 new townhomes should be ready for their new families by spring of next year. A bit of good news in the age of COVID-19. In National City, John Carroll, KPBS News.
And another major attraction is calling it quits for this year. The organizers of the Caboo Music Festival are pulling the plug due to the pandemic. They're thanking fans for hanging in there, but say postponing the event until next year is the right decision. All current pass holders will receive an email detailing refund options. The Emmy nominations are announced today, and an HBO series leads the way. Watchmen grabbed a staggering 26 nods. The Amazon comedy The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel hauled in 20 nominations, while Netflix's Ozark came in third with 18 nominations. The awards show will air September 20th.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, questions of justice. Attorney General William Barr spars with Democratic lawmakers. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here's a recap of today's top stories. 14 more people have died from the coronavirus in San Diego County. 498 new cases were reported, pushing the total past 28,000. 8 new outbreaks were also identified, including 5 in restaurants, 1 in a gym, 1 in a nail salon, and 1 in a home. San Diegans will have until December 30th to repay whatever rent they owe. The City Council approved the extension today on a 5-4 vote, which means it could be vetoed by the mayor. San Diego has had a moratorium on evictions since March. The freeze is set to expire at the end of September. The San Diego Air Pollution Control District says there were toxic chemicals in the smoke that billowed from the Navy ship fire in the San Diego Bay. However, they say the concentrations were within state safety limits. The USS Bonhomme Richard burned for more than 4 days. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.